Stage 6 of the 2025 Vuelta España, up here in the Principality of Andorra at 1,900 meters. This is our fourth country so far during this grand tour. And if you're wondering why my boot is filled with alcohol, tobacco, tax-free, and my tank is filled with tax-free gas, well, it's because I'm in Andorra, baby. You get a great price on it. All jokes aside, we had a serious day of racing out there, 170 kilometers, and at the end of the day, we saw a new race leader crowned. And I'll get to that, and I'll get to also the dramatic stage win and what it means for a certain rider. Let's roll it all back to the start because I want to get to some drama out there and some VIP appearances on this final climb up here in the Principality. The day was marked with a 10-man escape. Now I want you to take note because in that escape was Torstein Træen from Bahrain Victorious, the Norwegian rider. Other riders like Louis Vervaeke and a rider from one of the top teams in this race, Team UAE, who had just won the team time trial the day before. Well, that was none other than Jay Vine, who's already won stages here in the past. I think it was back in 2022. You'll remember in 2023, he won the Tour Down Under overall, that orange jersey. Well, he was up on the road attacking today. And you might have thought, well, Jay Vine has no form. You saw him off the back several times. You saw him involved in a crash at one point. Well, think again, you'll be fooled, because when we got into the latter part of today's stage, when we left Spain, because the majority of today's stage was in Spain, home of this race, before we entered into Andorra, where several cyclists call home, including Mike Woods, including Canadian Derek G. I'll get to him later. Once we got into Andorra, that's when the climb started to bite. We had the Comella climb, which I think might have been harder than this last climb, Powell. And it was no Powell for Juan Ayuso today. We're going to get to him and what happened there. On the Comella, which I ran a couple years ago when we came up here when Remco Evenepoel won the stage and ran into some VIPs there after the finish line. It's on the program for tomorrow to run. And today we ran around Besalú, beautiful city of 2,000 inhabitants, a Corniche run of rollers. I'm feeling pretty good after my crash the day before. Thankfully, the wounds are healing. Comella's on tap tomorrow. Today, on tap for the riders of this 2025 Vuelta España. And that's where Jay Vine, the Australian, threw down his attack that would see him go on to win the race solo. Jay Vine was never seen again on the hunt today. Doing so, well, he picked up the points maximum, Cat 2 climb at the top of Comella, maximum at the top of the Pau climb up here at 1,900 meters, 9.5 kilometers of climbing to get here for the stage victory, to take the white and blue polka dot jersey. Big one for Jay Vine, the Australian, who had to pull out of the Giro d'Italia earlier on this season after helping Isaac Del Toro so far into the race, but not able to help him to try to finish it off. Of course, we know with the Richard Carapaz, with the Simon Yates, with the Del Toro standoff, that the overall victory eventually went to the British rider, Simon Yates. Jay Vine sent a message to João Almeida ahead of this race, one of the two leaders of the UAE team, saying, look, I'm ready to race, I'm ready to support you. I have three aims. 1, we win the team time trial. Check. 1, I get my shot at a stage win. Check. 2, 3, what are we up to? 3, we go for the overall victory. I've never played the part in an overall victory for a rider, and I want to do that. That's what he said to me over there in the mix zone. After the first 2 of that 3 checklist, well, that's what he's aiming for next, is to help João Almeida win the overall. I mentioned João Almeida. Well, why not Juan Ayuso? Well, here's what's going on. Before I get to that, first, let me talk about what happened up in the escape, because when those attacks were coming, we saw the next strongest rider besides Jay Vine was a Norwegian friend, 30 years old, out to make a name for himself in a year that's crucial because he has no contract for next year. Let's hope home Norwegian team Uno X picks him up, because Torstein Træen, hope I'm getting the name pronunciation right, I even asked him in the mix zone afterwards, because guess what? He pulled on the red jersey, taking it off of Jonas Vingegaard. He was the best placed rider in that escape group, and he was out on the attack, not to only ride in the group to pick up the jersey, but to show he was one of the strongest riders out there. Well, he said, even in the interview afterwards, that gap was too much to bridge, and Jay Vine was too strong to bridge up to. I had to settle for second place. But Elise Træen, you picked up the red leader's jersey in a Grand Tour in the Vuelta a España, and he's wearing it. He's wearing it going into tomorrow. I spoke with Jack Haig afterwards, who's suffering with an ankle problem, and we hope Jack will make it through to the end. I have a special gift for him if he does. Thinking a bottle of wine like we did last year, or maybe a fine knife that you buy from one of those. Anyway. They have their work cut out for them. Bahrain victorious as they go on in these next days. Already a mountain day. Tomorrow we're going to hit the mountains. But Torstein Træen, as we saw today, is a serious climber, a serious rider. Won a stage, I think it was in the Tour of Swiss, or maybe it's the Tour of Romandie a few years ago, and now second in a stage and the red jersey. Okay, now you're wondering what's going on, because this GC group behind wasn't going to contest for the win, as we saw so much in the Tour de France in those last few stages when we thought Tadej Pogačar would bridge up and go for the stage victory, and it didn't happen in those final days. We saw the victory go from the escape. We saw the likes of Ben O'Connor pick up a stage win. We saw Thyne Arensman pick up another stage win. But today, same scenario played out where the GC riders were too far back, and instead it was the race within a race. The escape was fighting for victory, and back behind we saw a GC battle start to form. Juan Ayuso, the home country rider that everybody's cheering for, well, he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. He lost 11 minutes today. He was dropped pretty early on in the climb today and came in so far back. There was a massive scrum around Ayuso. I was trying to stick my mic in. It was all Spanish, and then I was trying to get in there for some English afterwards, and the press officer, same press officers, Tadej Pogačar, good friend, said, you know, look, let's do it tomorrow, English tomorrow. He's clearly worn out. But what I did hear in Spanish is that, look, I told you guys before coming into this race, the goal was never to go for the overall, just to test my legs, to see how I'm doing. And as we saw today, don't quite have it, the words of Juan Ayuso. So now we're down to just one rider from the UAE team Emirates to try to knock back, dethrone the favorite, the race favorite coming into this race, two-time Tour de France winner, Jonas Vingegaard. Now what happened with Jonas Vingegaard? Well, it was Lidl Trek pulling all day long, and I'm wondering, maybe you're wondering too, drop down in the comments, what do you think of this? Should Lidl Trek be pulling race favorite Jonas Vingegaard all the way up the climb? Or should all the other riders just say, look to Jonas's Visma team with Matteo Jorgensen, Sepp Kuss, Victor Campenaerts, Wilco Kilderman, Dylan Van Baarle. Those guys did all the early work today. Those guys were protecting Jonas Vingegaard. And why did Lidl Trek come to the front? Why not just force Visma to do all the work all day? Heck, Visma, you got the race favorite. This is on you, Lidl Trek could say. No, they did not. Lidl Trek came to the front and did the race work. They did the race work to try to perhaps tire Jonas Vingegaard, or perhaps to try to set up that move that we saw from Giulio Ciccone. Giulio Ciccone, for his part, did launch an attack. I think it was around 1.5 kilometers out on the screen. Must have been around 3 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers out on the road. Now on that road, before I get to how that GC group played out, Pavel Sivakov, one of the UAE riders not here in the race, was at the Tour de France to support Tadej Pogačar. He was yelling as Jay Vine passed. As we drove up the road, persona non grata, Derek G, who's leaving Team Israel Premier Tech, the same team who was caught up in controversy yesterday. We think he's leaving. His lawyers say he's leaving. I'm sure Team Ineos wants him to leave because that's where he's heading in 2026 if all goes to plan. But Sylvain Adams and the powers that be at Premier Tech are saying, no, you got a contract, you got to stay. Well, guess what? Derek G was out there in his bike kit and his bike, but it wasn't Israel Tech bike kit. It was just black bike kit. He was sitting there. I thought that was Derek G, and then I confirmed it with some others. They saw Derek G too. So there's our Canadian friend on the side of the road as the race goes by. I'm sure he's missing the action. Derek, we miss you too. What he would have seen was a great GC show. Not the likes that we were perhaps seeing in the Tour de France. Sure, it's a lower ranked field here, but it was a great battle. Ciccone ramping it up, going on the attack. Only Ving could follow. Now here's a perhaps dangerous move. Maybe João Almeida was playing his cards, kind of waiting, letting it develop and seeing what he had to do. He was pulling to bring it back, and then we saw it all come back together. João Almeida, cool Portuguese rider, played it smart, because in the end it came back together, and that group all finished together around about 3 minutes down on our stage winner, Jay Vine. But that doesn't matter. We're looking at the time of our Torstein Træen red jersey, new red jersey, back to Jonas Vingegaard. Now, Visma Bike UAE, they're not going to worry about the Bahrain victorious Norwegian rider. They're happy to let the jersey go away to him, as they did with David Gaudu earlier, because they're not true threats for the overall, and it means a lot for Bahrain victorious to have their man in the race leader's jersey, at least for one day. So what did we have here in our one-day visit to the Principality, where you can get tax-free alcohol, tax-free tobacco, perfume, and fill up your gas guzzling car for a low price? Well, we learned that Jay Vine means business. He wasn't bluffing at the back. He means business for the team time trial, stage win, and now he's thinking of the GC overall. And we have a new rider on our radar, Torstein Træen. They're going to be carrying that red jersey into stage 7 of the 2025 Vuelta España, because it's been a heck of a day of racing up here in the Principality of Andorra. Vuelta España.